This guy wakes up in a solid metal cage. He has no clothes on and zero clue where he is. When he looks around, he sees a bunch of similar cages filled with unfortunate souls who are about to be sold into slavery. But Jin, he isn't bothered by this whole scene at all. When a bandit girl comes over to feed them, he just casually stands up and tears right through the metal bars like they were nothing. When the girl sees how easily he shredded that metal, she's absolutely paralyzed with shock, terrified he's going to kill her. But instead of laying a hand on her, our boy actually heals her. He finds out she's only helping these bandits because they captured her little brother and forced her to work for them. So, Jin decides to deal with all those scumbags right then and there. He crushes the door and sends it flying, taking out the first bandit in his path. And he doesn't give a damn about the fact that he's buck naked. Jin takes them out one by one, leaving behind nothing but piles of beaten up bandits. The shocked bandits don't stand a ghost of a chance. He is just way too fast and too strong for them. Finally, he gets to their boss. This scum, despite being considered top tier in this world, doesn't even try to fight back. After seeing how our boy dismantled the last of his men, he just begs him to wait and asks what he wants. Money and slaves aren't a problem, he says. But our guy just finishes off the remaining bandits and closes in. The bandit boss just can't understand what is going on. Why can't he use his spirit powers? And why is this snake guy so overwhelmingly strong? Jin just looks at him like he's a pathetic bug, and the scumbag realizes he's truly screwed. In a desperate move, he runs to reveal his last resort, a cage containing a massive monster. The bandit boss is sure our boy is cooked now, but when the monster lunges forward, Jin easily blocks its attack. Now this scumbag is beyond shocked. He's never seen a human block a direct hit from a monster with their bare hands. It turns out that Jin has a superhuman constitution, and that's not all. Next, he pulls out his divine power and just obliterates the monster with a massive energy beam. When it's done, he turns back to that scumbag to give him a proper beating for what he did to all those poor souls. But why is Jin so strong, and how did he get this power? Well, it all started 100 million years ago. A massive catastrophe descended upon planet Earth, annihilating the entire human population across the globe. The seed of this calamity took root when a mysterious virus began mutating animals, twisting them into otherworldly, terrifying monsters that were later dubbed corruptors. Within a few short years, the outbreak spread so rapidly that humanity lost 99% of its population to the devastation. The remaining remnants of humanity tried their absolute best to hold the front lines and fight back, but unfortunately, it quickly became evident that conventional warfare was entirely useless against these beasts. Driven by desperation, humans began experimenting on their own kind. Out of all the trials, Jin Shiju was the only successful test subject to show actual results. Alongside him, scientists engineered a counter-virus comprised of nanomachines designed to restore the planet's corrupted environment. Armed with his newly obtained, unparalleled abilities, Jin became the superhuman savior of this world, always attempting to protect the last surviving pockets of humanity. Ultimately, however, it was all in vain. They were simply too late, and eventually, even the final human survivors perished. With no one left to protect, Jin's existence seemed stripped of its purpose, having failed the very task he was created for, or at least, that's what his scientist friend Kagura believed. Jin held a fundamentally different perspective. To him, there was still a reason to keep going. Even if he couldn't save the present population, he remained confident that his powers could benefit future generations. With the nanomachines already hard at work purging the corruptor's influence from the environment, he was optimistic that the Earth would eventually be restored, and he was willing to wait for that day. Consequently, Kagura placed him inside a hibernation capsule designed to keep him alive for the centuries to come. While Jin slept peacefully in stasis, the monsters continued to ravage the planet. Yet, as decades turned into centuries and centuries blurred into millennia, the shift in the global environment finally began to compound exponentially. Those extraordinarily mutated creatures gradually began to deteriorate, making way for new species to thrive. This cycle of evolution continued for 100 million years, eventually bringing us to a scene where a trio of newly evolved humanoid beings is desperately trying to outpace a terrifying monster. The frantic survivors stumble across an ancient ruin and quickly duck inside to take cover. The relentless demonic beast barges right into the facility after them. Backed into a corner with nowhere left to run, the trio is essentially ready to become a satiating dinner for the creature. In a final, desperate plea, the girl in the group cries out for help, praying for the village's guardian god to rescue them. Miraculously, her words are heard, triggering the awakening of our boy, who had been sleeping in the capsule right behind them for 100 million years. The ancient human unleashes an energy beam, pulsing the monster on the spot. The confused trio has no clue what the hell just happened, and the situation only gets more messed up when a butt-naked man pops out of nowhere. The very first thing this naked Chad does is look for his clothes, which are neatly preserved in an indestructible lockbox his friend Kagura had developed. After booting up the lab's ancient systems, he discovers he has basically speed-run 100 million years into the future. Although the passing of eons has corrupted most of the data, it's an absolute miracle the machines are functional at all. It appears the nanomachine virus Kagura created did exactly what it was supposed to do, annihilating the corruptors, and helping preserve the facility. He also finds a communication cube left behind by his old friend, though its contents remain a mystery for now. He then turns toward the humanoid locals, completely forgetting his manhood is just dangling in the breeze. Before realizing there are literal kids staring at him in the buff, he quickly gets dressed, restoring the same fresh look he rocked millions of years ago. A short while later, he exits the facility with the trio, only to be instantly blinded by the intense sun shining above the horizon. Truthfully, he wasn't expecting such a vibrant sight. The view before him is nothing short of magnificent, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic wasteland he once knew. The kids immediately start heading back toward their settlement, insisting that their guardian god follow them. Our boy, on the other hand, is far too preoccupied trying to figure out exactly what kind of species he is dealing with. After all, humanity should technically be fossil fuel by now. These humanoids with distinct animal traits must be the result of millions of years of evolution, mixed with the continuous interference of nanomachines. Not to mention, these guys are speaking the exact same language used by humans eons ago, heavily implying they branched off from the exact same root. He introduces himself as Jin Shiju, requesting that they just use his first name in return. The girl with goat ears introduces herself as Hakamafil, the cola-looking dude is Dampo, and the cat girl beside him is Shandy. Hakama decides to save the rest of the pleasantries for later and begins dragging Jin along, explaining that her village is just around the corner. She's incredibly desperate to bring their newfound guardian god home so he can fend off the current invaders. Tragically, by the time they arrive, the village has already been raided and devastated, with multiple settlements completely engulfed in flames. Shandy absolutely loses it at the catastrophic sight and rushes ahead in sheer panic to find her mother. As they survey the damage, Jin takes a moment to contemplate their dire situation. He immediately notices how flimsy the town's fortifications are. Both the boundary walls and the houses are constructed from simple wood. This detail alone makes it glaringly obvious that this new civilization is technologically way behind the human era he remembers. Pushing deeper into the village, Jin spots a woman actively fighting off a bizarre monster. From just a single glance, it's obvious she's barely holding her own. It doesn't take long for him to realize that the creature she's facing looks identical to the corruptors from millions of years ago. Furthermore, the surviving corruptors aren't the only unusual thing here. Little Haikama apparently knows some kind of magic technique that makes her physically glow. Ultimately, her intervention proves unnecessary. Jin dashes forward and effortlessly knocks the living daylights out of the monster with a single devastating kick. Moving swiftly, he scoops up the injured older woman in his arms and dashes out of the danger zone, leaving little Haikama a clear opening to deliver the finishing blow. Channeling her magic, she unleashes a tiny fireball that packs a massive punch, officially putting the monster down for the count. Observing the dead creature, Jin confirms his theory: the atmospheric nanomachines have indeed stripped these monsters of their legendary healing abilities. What he doesn't understand, however, is how a local girl was able to wield those same nanomachines. His educated guess is that these folks draw nanomachine particles directly from the atmosphere and channel them into offensive spells, much like he does. The glaring catch is that, historically, only pure humans were capable of manipulating that technology. He directly expresses his curiosity to the woman he just saved, wondering if everyone in this era possesses such magic. She isn't entirely sure what he's getting at, but she clarifies that only a select handful of people can actually wield this ability. In their culture, it is believed that individuals blessed with divine powers are the only ones privileged enough to use this magic. In their specific village, there are no more than 4 people who hold this distinction. Jin doesn't have to think too hard to piece it together. Divine powers is just their primitive, fancy way of explaining nanomachine manipulation. Hakama rushes over to the older woman, who turns out to be her grandmother, and anxiously inquires about the rest of the villagers, only to learn they have already evacuated. This statement washes a wave of relief over the trio, though the grandmother is deeply worried about why the kids returned to the dangerous village instead of evacuating with everyone else. After all, the beast they just fought was merely a larva compared to the massive adult monster currently terrorizing the area. Suddenly, a voice of reason penetrates through the tension, assuring the old lady that there is absolutely nothing to fret about. That giant invader she mentioned, this newcomer confidently claims he can slaughter it single-handedly. The grandmother is shocked to see these familiar faces back in the war zone and immediately questions the man about the other villagers. The blue-haired warrior confirms that the rest of the civilians have safely reached the shelter. As it turns out, the older man accompanying this blue-haired guy is actually Haikama's father. The two share an emotional reunion. Naturally, he demands to know where she ran off to. The girl honestly admits she went straight to the sealed door, much to the grandmother's absolute shock. The older woman is furious that Haikama wandered into that god-forsaken territory. According to local legend, the doing beyond that door belongs strictly to the guardian god of the village. Because little Haikama felt utterly threatened by the monster invasion, she explains she simply went to seek the deity's help. And as she proudly points out, the literal god from their legends is standing right beside her. Understandably, the grandmother is highly skeptical, flat out refusing to acknowledge this random young lad as their divine protector. Even worse, based on his appearance, they assume our boy belongs to an inferior species, making the idea of granting him such a sacred title downright ridiculous. Stepping in, Little Shanti tries to convince her blue-haired brother that Jin is the real deal. In response, her highly prejudiced brother is quick to dismiss her claims, pointing specifically to Jin's ordinary human ears. In their society, anyone who doesn't inherit distinct animal traits is classified as a lesser being. As far as this guy can tell, his little sister is just operating under a massive, naive misunderstanding. Still, the little girl stands her ground proudly, revealing that this man easily defeated the invader chasing them. Unimpressed, her brother brushes the feat off, arrogantly claiming he could take down an invader just as easily. Turning his attention to our hero, who already looks utterly exhausted by all this unwarranted crowd, the blue-haired warrior threatens the intruder. He tells him to leave the village immediately, because they have no room to accommodate a being of inferior blood. The yapper just walks right past Jin, still running his mouth. He's so painfully full of himself that he voluntarily takes on the suicidal job of killing the giant invader all by himself. By the way, this arrogant bluehead goes by the name Sars. Grandmother becomes visibly distressed by the reckless, spur-of-the-moment decisions Sar just made. She then turns her attention back to Jin. Even though she still couldn't care less about who he actually is, she admits it would be incredibly rude not to express her genuine gratitude for him saving her life. Following her thanks, she asks for one final favor to help escort the kids back to the safety of the shelter while she goes to ensure Sars doesn't throw his life away due to sheer arrogance. Unsurprisingly, our boy flat out refuses to comply. They directly questioned his pride, and he certainly isn't going to just stand there and let them trample all over it. He decides he's gonna make damn sure they realize he isn't some useless bystander, and he is definitely not an inferior species. The scene rightfully transitions to the nearby lake, which is currently harboring the grotesque, massive monster. Sars has finally arrived on the scene, and the dude doesn't so much as flinch before dropping into a combat stance, with his spear and body charged with crackling, Zia's like thunder. He executes a lightning-fast sprint toward the beast. In an effort to counterattack, the vile creature quite literally uses its own offspring as projectile weapons. Luckily, these unnurtured, slimy larvae are easy targets for Sars' electrified spear. With the path cleared, Sars capitalizes on the opening, leaping high off the ground to deliver a devastating slash directly across the bastard's face. The monster screeches out loud in sheer agony. Of course, we all know it couldn't possibly be that easy and we'd be right. To Sars' utter dismay, the monster's deep, gaping wound immediately begins to regenerate. The sudden shock paralyzes the blue-haired warrior, leaving him wide open for a lethal counter-attack. He has no time to dodge, but exactly as expected, Jin intervenes at the last second, effortlessly blocking the massive strike like it's no big deal. Sars, the once unshakably arrogant fool, is suddenly hit with a massive reality check, and the show is just getting started. The monster leaps back to launch another strike with double the previous force. However, doesn't even grant the creature the opportunity to swing. With just a casual snap of his fingers, Jin blasts a clean hole right through the monster's flesh. The cocky runt can only watch the spectacular display in stunned silence. Soon after, the rest of the group comes rushing toward the water's edge. They haven't even finished catching their breath from the crazy sprint before their jaws hit the floor all over again, watching our boy block the colossal monster with a single hand. As the monster continues trying to apply immense force, Jin genuinely starts getting bored of the exchange, deciding to wrap things up ASAP. He grabs Sars by the waist and leaps out of the way. By the time the camera pans out, we witness the massive monster completely pierced through and through by Jin's energy. Sars frantically argues that big, flashy attacks are useless if the monster can just infinitely regenerate. Thankfully, Jin has already taken that exact variable into consideration. This is precisely where the nanomachines come in handy, actively neutralizing the monster's cellular regeneration. The damage Sars inflicted earlier was actually quite considerable, but the cut was far too shallow to overload the creature's healing factor. By now, Sars is practically having a mental breakdown just processing the sheer possibility that this inferior guy might actually be their guardian god. Humorously, Jin quickly denies having any divine roots that would qualify him for such a grandiose title. What he does know for a fact is that the entire reason for his continued existence was to safeguard the people of the future and slaughter the very monsters standing in front of him. Enraged, the beast snarls and wildly swings its massive tail, desperately trying to squash the agile hero who keeps slipping through its defenses like water. Having quickly formulated a winning strategy, Jin proceeds to completely immobilize the creature by trapping it in dense yellow ice crystals. As he charges up a critical hit guaranteed to obliterate the beast into smithereens, he finally gives a proper introduction. He declares himself a monster born directly from humanity's own tragic foolishness. He is a relic who has survived through 100 million years of sleep, the designated weapon supposed to cleanse the earth of this horrific menace. Sars isn't exactly in a position to comprehend what the hell this guy is mumbling about, but the only thing he cares about right now is whether Jin can actually live up to his massive claims. Well, of course Jin can. After all, he is the literal culmination of countless brutal, tragic experiments, a weapon prepared beyond imagination, born from humanity's blood-stained history. He is the first, last, and only true human remaining in this world. With his introduction thoroughly complete, Jin unleashes an energy attack so blindingly intense that it instantly incinerates the monster. The beam is so unfathomably powerful that it shoots straight through the Earth's atmosphere and pierces the vacuum of space, guaranteeing zero chance for the bastard to ever regrow. With the monster definitively dead and dusted, Sars completely loses the will to speak, having just had his inflated arrogance thoroughly shoved right back in his face. Meanwhile, unseen by the group, there seems to be someone keeping a very close eye on our boy from the bushes. This mysterious woman was originally sent merely to surveil the new type of invader reported at the lake. She certainly didn't realize she'd be lucky enough to witness an entirely different kind of monster in action. As far as she's concerned, even the elite top brass of the Holy Knights back in the royal capital wouldn't dare go solo against such a colossal threat. Yet this unknown young gun just made it look like an absolute piece of cake. The spy is so hyped that she literally cannot contain her excitement to relay everything she just witnessed back to her guild. Later that day, Jin finally listens to the million-year-old holographic message his friend Kagura left behind for him. His digital buddy kicks things off by acknowledging that millions of years must have passed by the time Jin actually watches this. Because of this massive time jump, Kagura desperately wonders what the future of Earth looks like and whether the planet's environment has actually healed. Right off the bat, he delivers the bad news: the evil corruptors will never truly go extinct, even if the world itself drastically recovers. Honestly, that fact is already pretty evident, since Jin literally just finished fighting one. Kagura reveals that while Jin was in deep hibernation, he periodically entered cold sleep himself just to observe the gradual changes happening across the globe. Thanks to the environmental restoration, the overall number of corruptors was steadily decreasing. Unfortunately, as the ecosystem shifted, the corruptor began to evolve right alongside it. This adaptation was a glaring sign that the world would never be able to completely rid itself of this menace. To counter this, Kagura explains that he intentionally genetically edited the newly emerging life forms, giving them the potential to resist the corruptors rather than just falling prey to them. On top of that, Kagura reveals he left behind a massive power-up specifically for our boy. Egg. That ominous syringe full of glowing green liquid is exactly what Jin needs to inject directly into his veins. Upon doing so, Jin's body immediately begins to crackle and radiate with arcane energy. The serum he just took grants him 100 compatibility with the nanomachines. Once the integration is fully complete, Jin gains the insane ability to generate physical objects through nanomachine shape transformation. The best part, this upgrade is just the tip of the iceberg. His old friend reveals that he has hidden similar power-ups scattered all across the world. He purposely didn't store them all in one place just in case the corruptors manage to destroy a facility and wipe everything out at once. Plus, this scavenger hunt ensures Jin will have to travel across the globe and witness the magnificence of the new world firsthand. Kagura admits he has no idea what kind of threat the corruptors will pose in this distant era, but he is absolutely certain that the future is far brighter than the bleak, apocalyptic reality they left behind eons ago. As the message progresses, the holographic prediction shows just how much the poor scientist aged over time. It's a bittersweet moment, as Kagura expresses profound sadness knowing he would never be able to see this beautiful, restored world for himself. After officially passing the torch and handing over the responsibilities of the future to Jin, the message finally concludes. Right on cue, Haikama and the rest of the gang arrive, actively searching for their so-called guardian god. Chi and the Kola guy, Dimple, have come to drag him back to the village because the entire settlement is eagerly waiting for him. As they head back, Jin's sharp eyes catch a glimpse of a familiar research facility access key dangling around Haikama's neck. Curious, he inquires about the pendant, wondering exactly how she got her hands on it. Haikama explains that long ago, an incredible individual told her ancestors to pass it down through the generations as a protective charm. Legend had it that if imminent danger ever threatened the village, this very key would summon the guardian god to protect them. Hearing this, Jin is deeply moved. He's thrilled that his friend went to such incredible lengths to set everything up for him, leaving him feeling profoundly indebted to Kagura. Back in the center of the village, a full-blown party is already underway. While everyone is busy stuffing their faces and drinking, the kids finally parade their guardian back into the spotlight. However, the mood shifts slightly, as the adult villagers immediately start gossiping upon seeing an inferior species creature. To their narrow minds, it simply doesn't make sense for a biologically ordinary being to hold the legendary title of guardian god. Just as they are loudly doubting our boy's potential, Saras suddenly stands up and completely goes off on the group for daring to point fingers at their savior, even going so far as to dish out some well-deserved punches. After all, these hypocrites were the very same cowards who hightailed it out of there the second danger reared its ugly head. Watching this wild back and forth, Haikama and Dambo can practically smell the sheer hypocrisy radiating from Sars. After all, He was literally the first person to scoff at and vehemently doubt Jin's strength just a few hours prior. The village grandmother steps forward to address Jin personally. Feeling overwhelmingly indebted, she attempts to express her utmost gratitude on behalf of the entire settlement. The reality is, if it weren't for his timely intervention, none of them would be standing there right now. The village would have been reduced to ash. True to form, my guy nonchalantly brushes off the flattery, insisting it was just part of his job. Still, he knows these folks won't let him off the hook without giving him something in return as a gesture of goodwill. Rather than asking for material wealth, he requests something far more valuable: information. Jin wants a detailed rundown on the current state of the world. Unfortunately, a bunch of isolated villagers aren't exactly equipped to answer such a daunting geopolitical question. To get the answers he seeks, they strongly advise him to visit the royal capital where the king of Cromatia resides. Since people from all walks of life gather in the capital, it's a massive hub for global affairs and vital intel. They mention that merchants from their own Kadama village frequently travel there to sell specialty goods crafted from wood and silkworm thread. While the road to the capital was notoriously long and treacherous, the grandma reckons Jin will be perfectly fine since he's obviously not your average Doe. She even tasks Hakama with being his official guide, suggesting Jin take her along since she was already planning to head to the royal capital anyway. Because Hakama is one of the rare few who can wield divine powers, she wants to enroll in the prestigious academy dedicated to training magic users. Jin is genuinely surprised to learn that formal educational institutions still exist in this era. Suddenly, it becomes clear that our boy has earned himself a very loud, very loyal admirer. Sars enthusiastically volunteers to act as the guardian god's personal bodyguard on the journey. The old woman quickly shoots him down, reminding Sars that he literally has zero reason to visit the capital. However, Sars loudly boasts that he absolutely does have a reason: he plans to join the esteemed Holy Knight Order. Branda, however, knows this is purely wishful thinking. She ruthlessly points out that Sars couldn't even manage to get accepted into the basic academy, so joining the elite Knight Order is a massive long shot. This catches Jin off guard. Considering Sars is a divine power wielder, Jin assumed the guy would breeze through the admission process effortlessly. Hakama enlightens him about the catch: there's a mandatory written exam designed specifically to filter out the idiots, and Sars was tragically a victim of his own sheer dumbness. Banter aside, Jin finds himself growing increasingly curious about this elite class known as the Holy Knights. Speaking of which, the scene transitions away from the village to a heavily armored knight. He is visibly stunned to learn that the giant invader terrorizing the Kadama village region has already been completely annihilated. The one delivering this massive bombshell is the exact same spy chick who was watching the entire late battle from the bushes. The knight demands she confirm the facts one more time, and the girl firmly corroborates her story without a single moment of hesitation. The Holy Knight is in absolute disbelief until today. He never could have imagined that anyone outside of their elite order possessed the raw capability to solo a monster of that caliber. Right in the middle of their debris, a corruptor suddenly attempts to ambush the spy, leaping at her exposed back. The knight reacts with blinding speed, drawing his sword and slicing the monster cleanly in two. Instead of retreating to the safety of the kingdom, the knight makes a bold decision. He is officially too intrigued, eager to personally track down and meet the mysterious man who effortlessly slaughtered such an enormous beast. Jin wakes up to a gorgeous morning, enjoying the fresh air, and still finding it hard to believe that he can enjoy scenery like this. Part of him regrets that his dear friend Kagura can't see it alongside him. One of the kids brings him his clothes, urging the guardian god to put them on. In the next scene, we have our boy on the village side. Hakama's grandma is telling her to fulfill her duty properly, as a guy, while Sars is acting all fed up that he couldn't be the one to lead Jin. As a travel guide, Jin takes a special interest in the guy, and even praises Sars's movement, assuring him that he'll be waiting for his arrival at the royal capital. This remark turns Sars into a squealing fangirl, wishing the guardian god the best and hoping that he takes care of Hakama. Hakama herself is told to stay safe, and with that, the journey of the two begins. Upon their departure, the midget and the tall man walk together, crossing all kinds of gorgeous and scenic views. Hakama shows him around until they finally set up camp. Jin asks about how far the capital is. Apparently, it's 4 more days of walking, so it's not as far as he expected. But she's really curious about his side, and why he's bent on exploring the world. Refusing to share, he tells her that it's a secret. Deep down, Gojo over here knows that the corruptors are still alive based on Kagura's loose description, and he even got to encounter a few. In this era, their normal rate of reproduction only occurs in destroyed and polluted environments, the exact opposite of this place. This means something or someone is causing a change behind the scenes that needs to be investigated. Hakama is scared to see him make a face so serious while lost in thought, so he apologizes to her for contemplating. Jin understands one thing: this era isn't totally dominated by the corruptor creatures. Signs of survival are clear, and all around. His first main goal is to investigate the people of this era, then deal with the corruptors. Researching the monsters isn't so hard, as he can personally do it at his leisure. Apart from that, Bro wants an immediate change, and requests Hakama stop calling him a guardian god. It gives him too much respect, and he has to urge her to just call him Jin. The sound of a horse galloping catches the attention of both. A holy knight has arrived alongside his team, urging to have a moment with our duel. This guy looks like your average Prince Charming, except Jin doesn't care, asks about his identity anyway. Hailing from the Holy Knight Order, the captain of the 7th Division announces himself as Argus Ulton. The concept of a holy knight is still new to our boy, who wonders if these are the interesting beings that the villagers mention. Among Argus's team, whoa. She's even hyping up how insanely fast his spirit art activation was. The other day, she dropped a term our boy wasn't familiar with. Apparently, in this current era, borrowing power from spirits is called divine power, and the techniques used to cultivate that energy are known as the spirit method, or spirit arts. In other words, Kagura and Jin's nanomachines are essentially being mistaken for spirits, which is way beyond the locals' comprehension. He knows they must look like some totally cracked out fantasy to the people of this age, but he can't help but remember Karina's intense feelings regarding lesser beings. The term sparks Jin's interest, and he learns that this era is home to several different races, including people who resemble insects and fish. According to her grandmother, certain races can even live in water or are restricted to specific regions. These traits change over time because the creatures evolve to adapt to their environments. This realization is fascinating to Jin. He immediately reflects on the fact that some human survivors must have kickstarted an evolutionary cycle over 100 million years. He doesn't want to overthink this massive assumption, but Jin figures those who didn't adapt to the environment basically became livestock, the so-called inferior species. Since they couldn't evolve, they were viewed as weak bottom feeders. Even though society treats them like a bunch of nobodies and sells them as slaves, the very concept of slavery existing in this era seriously bothers our boy. However, Haikama stands resolute in her own opinion. She brightly asserts that there's hardly any difference between them and these inferior beings. She doesn't understand why people treat others with such disregard just because they were different. Every person is weird in their own way, she says, and hearing her talk like that, Din is genuinely impressed by the little girl's character. While they were chatting, someone pops up in front of them looking rugged and beaten down. This kid collapses on the road, begging for help. As Haikama rushes to his side, Jin observes the kid closely, realizing that this one doesn't possess any animalistic features, no special ears, which means he's some kind of human. The kid is covered from neck to toe in bruises. These injuries aren't normal for a casual accident. Haikama tries her best to lift the girl up while Jin activates his powers to help heal her. But instead of being grateful, the kid immediately drops the act and pulls a blade against Haikama's neck, threatening to kill her if Jin moves an inch. This situation turned out far different from what our boy imagined. Now he knows for certain that he's been set up from the start. He scans the environment to check for others nearby. A man materializes out of thin air, praising Poir for her work and for following instructions. This ability is called stealth camouflage. It functions thanks to nanomachines absorbing the visuals of the surroundings and using them to create an invisibility cloak. The only weakness is that the invisibility fails upon movement, but these guys used it pretty effectively. The captain starts bullying Jin, calling him an inferior species, and eyeing his neat clothes. He asks the same question about where Jin came from, but our boy is stone cold and currently on his mewing streak, so he doesn't respond. Haikama shouts for him worriedly, but the captain threatens to kill the girl if he dares to move even a bit. Haikama acts on her own again by trying to activate her ability, but our boy roars at her to stop at once. He doesn't want her using that kind of power against people, implying it's far too dangerous. The little girl doesn't know what to do, while Captain Bandit over here is having the time of his life, realizing the girl has divine power too. They ask Jin if he can also wield such strength, but bro is in the mood to mess around, so he acts like a mystery waiting to be solved. Pissed off, the method kicks him down, reminding the inferior species to stay in his lane. The captain then takes issue with his subordinate for trying to damage the goods. Then again, they don't have high hopes of selling them at a high price anyway. They don't even entertain the idea of Jin possessing divine power since he looks like an inferior being at best. At the same time, Haikama is starting to realize that these are the bandits and slave traders Argus warned them about. The bandit leader activates a spell of his own to take care of the girl first, and Haikama fears for her life, realizing they will be taken and sold as slaves at this rate. In the next scene, hilariously, Jin wakes her up from her beauty sleep. Bro has no shirt on, because these fools literally stole his entire fit, only sparing his undies. Haikama seems to be alright, but she's genuinely curious about where they even are. It looks like some kind of containment facility where other slaves are being kept. Jin explains that it's the bandits' hideout, even pointing to the ones who were captured before them. All of these guys look like they were in rough shape, and most are inferior species. It's a grim scene, but hilariously, Haikama is more curious about why this dude has his chest out in the open like that. Jin explains they took everything away from him because he looked strange, but she's just amazed at how confident this man is without his clothes. Apparently, this look is what suits Jin best for comfort. But aside from that, she's mostly curious why he didn't fight back then and there. With his godlike power, he could have wiped them out in a single go. Before he can answer, Poir is sent into the room with some breakfast. After finding them await, She offers them a meal. Haikana is pissed off, but Poir doesn't really care whether they hate her or not, as she never had any expectations of being forgiven. The pure-hearted girl is annoyed, but Jin stuns the blue-haired girl by actually calling her kind. It comes as a shock to the pretend victim, but in reality, Jin shares that truly bad people don't even care about the concept of whether someone hates them or if they deserve forgiveness. The fact that Poir even thinks about these things is enough to conclude she's kind regardless. The underwear man over here is done playing yoga and gets down to real business. He grabs hold of the bars and, in true Uncle Iroh fashion, literally bends them apart to carve a way out. Poir is left flabbergasted by what she just saw. In reality, Jin has actually been waiting for her all this time for a private conversation. The blue-haired girl is confused as to why, but Jin can already sense that she's been blackmailed into working for them because someone she cares about is imprisoned here somewhere. Poir is terrified by how this guy's guess is so damn accurate. He even goes on to heal her wounds, emphasizing that the only reason he was fooled is because he knew the girl's injuries were actually real. Criminals don't really go around roughing up their own allies to a near-death condition. That's how he knew immediately that Poir was being blackmailed and forced into this work. Jin's words cause her to experience massive guilt, ultimately giving her a chance to share that her little brother has been captured by these 6 scumbags. They constantly threaten to sell the boy out of the country if she resists, promising that she will never see him again. Poir breaks down into tears, collapsing as she explains that even her parents were slaughtered by these bastards, so her brother is all she has left. Just hearing her side of the story gets this man going unlike anything else. Jin is in a literal fit of rage, and Haikama finally understands why he let himself be captured like that. His goal has always been to save these people, but he also knows that villains are stubborn and annoying. Even letting a single one escape leads to disaster later, because they can rebuild their power and create trouble all over again. Long story short, Bro wants to squash these cockroaches together, and he starts off by kicking the crap out of this furry with a backshot. With the path now open, this Gojo Sutra lookalike intends to rip these lowlives to pieces. Jin knows the psyche of villains more than anyone, and we get an understanding of this when we circle back 100 million years into the past, to when human civilization had reached its technological prime. As a kid at the time, he was beaten down and had nothing. His first instinct was to admire justice in the world, but that admiration came with a second, more haunting realization: any world that needed justice was also filled with an overwhelming amount of bad people who wanted to hunt him down. For example, living an ordinary life is something to be praised, but in the kind of environment he grew up in, the boy never experienced the peace he truly wanted. So, when it came to the people who tried to mess with him, Jin literally crushed them under the weight of his power, breaking their bones and destroying them. Over the years, he took down bad people everywhere he went, continuously crushing those who disrupted the peace of the world, until one day a man approached him with a different perspective. He thought that Jin had been born into the wrong world, and that leads us back to the present. Our boy is walking like a total Chad to confront the losers in front of him, having already laid waste to piles of bodies. Bro just wants to increase his kill count, refusing to answer any questions. He throws one of their own men at the henchman in front. The moment one of them catches the guy, our boy swoops in with a lightning-fast kick and slaughters the other. His friend is left horrified, because Jin just sends this dude flying into a crater in the wall, appearing no different than a goddamn monster who doesn't know how to stop. Terrifying. The guy tries to run away, but it's pointless. Only his agonizing screams reach the captives on the lower level. Poir senses that these screams are coming from the others, and she's genuinely starting to wonder who the hell Jin is. Ikama casually reveals that this dude is a walking god, and that they have nothing to worry about, as he'll take care of everything by himself. Right now, they need to follow his instructions to head outside, but it's still terrifying to Poir that they're actually about to be saved. The leader of the bandits isn't exactly easy to be. Even though Jin possesses a talent for powerful divine magic, in a battle of brute strength, it's hard to imagine anyone taking that guy down. But while Poir is busy thinking such useless thoughts, our boy already has the dude quivering on his knees. The boss begs Jin to stop, offering him lumps of money and even adding slaves into the deal. By the way, Poir's brother is being kept in this very room. Jin is disgusted by the mere suggestion of being offered slaves. He kills another guy right in front of the boss, while the bandit leader questions what the hell is going on. Not even his spirit arts seem to activate in the face of this man's divine powers. But even more than that is the mystery of why Jin gained all this power in the first place. Hilariously, our boy calls this clown a half-baked villain, because the real ones at least have the spirit to run away when they know they're outclassed. The bandit leader and his henchmen are all condescending assholes who look down on others, deluding themselves into thinking they might actually win. But the moment they realize a loss is inevitable, they begin to plea. Honestly, this verbal beatdown is satisfying. Following our boy's advice, the bandit leader finally moves his feet and starts running. He goes straight to the elevator to pull the lever, unleashing a secret weapon they've kept caged like a monster. Jin is shocked to find it corrupted under their control. It's a powerful beast acquired for a certain noble. What bothers me is how the hell purple Arnold Schwarzenegger over here couldn't break out of his cage sooner. The bandit leader is more than happy to give Jin a challenge, vowing to reduce everything to chaos as the creature roars its battle cry. The first attack is made by the corrupted monster, who swings to pummel Jin into the floor. The attack is blocked, giving us a view of that massive jat in the process. The bandit leader is left speechless by the power of Jin's ass, the power of his muscles. Meanwhile, Jin shares that he was literally born with a superhuman body, possessing muscle fibers several orders of magnitude denser than the average person. Now that it's his turn to strike, this man kicks the creature back before vowing to unleash even more of his strength. Bro shoots a Kamehameha wave like he's Goku or something, wiping out the monster and blowing it to pieces in a single blast. All that yapping, and the bandit leader is right back to where he started on his knees again. Jin stares him down, wondering what this pathetic scumbag will do next now that he's cornered. Now that he's officially run out of options, the guy tries to weasel his way out, begging to be spared. But my glorious, white-haired king responds with a clean hook to the face, refusing to show even a hint of mercy. With the matter settled, he reels in his aura-forming drip, and apologizes to the kids for making them wait. First, our boy wants to check the documents to gather direct evidence of their crimes. He cracks open a drawer, and finds a pretty interesting set of notes. At a glance, you'd probably think this dude just hit the jackpot, but nope, our boy has absolutely no idea what the hell he's reading. The language is completely unfamiliar to him, so he's forced to turn to Hakama for help. Even then, Dean can't quite put his finger on why these bandits were using the corrupted. To confirm his suspicions, he inspects the mangled remains of the monster he just defeated. By doing this, he can access the camera feeds from the nanomachines floating around the room. Jin wants to check the records from at least last week, and stumbles across some footage that catches his eye. Apparently, a certain noble brought the monster to them and refused to elaborate on his intentions for the creature. Instead, this conniving villain left them with a little nugget of info, hinting at the country's upcoming demise. Jin takes note of this detail for later, as the scene cuts to the children who escaped containment. Puar finally reunites with her little brother, and the two share a long hug, relieved that neither of them was seriously hurt. She turns and addresses Jin as if he were a god, thanking him for everything he's done. While our guy refuses to accept the title, he's curious about the people in red uniforms currently rounding up the bandits. Apparently, they were guild staff members. In fact, the man with the majestic hair and beard standing nearby is the guild master of their city. The man is drawn to Jin and walks up to ask if he's connected to the incident. Our boy confirms his involvement, prompting Pedrig to formally introduce himself as the guild master and thank him for his efforts. He takes one look at Jin, stunned that someone could defeat such a massive number of enemies without taking a single hit. Despite Jin having the appearance of an inferior species, Pedrig can tell this guy is no joke. The guildmaster shares that the incident caused a ton of damage, and that bandit extermination requests are at an all-time high. This makes Jin curious, as he figured any lord would do his best to prioritize capturing the bandits. The guildmaster laughs, arguing that not even the lord has that level of authority. Dealing with crimes is considered the duty of the guild members, the ones who swear their loyalty directly to the king. Even if Lord Shapian, the ruler of the land, were to commit a crime, they would have to report the situation to the king. Even if something like that seems unlikely, Pedrig is confident in his assumption. Meanwhile, Jin compares the situation to 100 million years ago, realizing that a lord is basically a mayor while the guild acts like the police. Still, Lord Shapian isn't someone who can be trusted easily. Jin decides to hand over all the documents he recovered from the bandits, asking if they will be of any use to the guild. The guild master reads one of them, only to realize it's a proper list of everyone who traded with the bandits. Thanks to this list, they can easily arrest the entire group. Curious, Jin asks if the city lord's name is also on the list, but impressively enough, Lord Shapian's name is nowhere to be found. He's a clever villain who knows how to hide his tracks. For now, there isn't much Jin can do about the situation. He helped free the slaves, so now he wants to know what will become of them. The guild master assures him that the guild will take responsibility for returning them home safely, provided a missing persons report has been filed. But for those who don't have anyone looking for them, they unfortunately have nowhere to go. The system is trash because it refuses to account for cases like Puar and Nineb, who lost their parents. Jin asks if there's a shelter to keep them in, but shockingly, this errant doesn't even have a shelter in town. Pedrig can only try to find work for the kids, but since they were both classified as inferior, that's going to be difficult too. The kids are sulking while Jin is disappointed that things are the same in this world as any other. He doesn't want to leave these kids high and dry, even if there's no work available. Suddenly, an idea pops into his head, and he asks the two if they'd be willing to work somewhere if they had the chance. Puar agrees and wants to give it a shot, which reminds Jin of the Golden Knight, our guest, who once offered to help if needed. In the next scene, we re at the royal capital, Formosa, to visit Argus. The Holy Knight is on his way back when he suddenly feels a random chill out of nowhere. Arriving at his residence, he tells his team to rest up for the day. As Argus returns to his quarters, he's welcomed by an entourage of maids and butlers, greeting him with pride and glory. The first thing he does is ask for an update, and from the reactions of his servants, the Holy Knight can tell that something is wrong. The butler apologizes for troubling his master the moment he's returned. While this is going on, Argus's sister watches the scene from above with a glaring look. Argus receives the report and gets an immediate hack. The situation is way worse than he imagined, as an invader somehow popped up inside the capital and started wreaking havoc. The question of how it got in is less important to him than who helped guide the beast inside. That's the real problem. His best guess is that it's someone from the Harness Academy, a place teeming with suspicious people plotting their demise. Regardless, he's in dire need of comrades to get the situation in the capital under control. At this time, Jin and his group resume their journey to the capital. 3 days fly by during the extermination mission, and Poir begins to wonder if there's truly a job for inferior beings like them in the capital. Being the kind man he is, Jin assures them that their ability to read and write is already a huge edge, urging the kids to have more confidence. Hakama, on the other hand, points into the distance, noting that Hakama, on the other hand, points into the distance, mentioning that the capital is close by. Our boy is absolutely gobsmacked as he stares at the grand beauty of the royal capital. By evening, they arrive inside the city walls, and the place is bustling with people everywhere. Hakama reveals that the capital relies heavily on imports, which means every kind of good is available here, even the Kadama clothing they mentioned before. Jin finds it all pretty interesting, and takes notice of a bunch of insect mutants, too. There's an abundance of races around here, showcasing how they all develop differently. The streets are tidy, and safety is top-notch in the capital, but even with all those benefits, there are still some disgusting parts. Jin reflects that each era shares its own bundle of problems. He asks Hakama about the Academy's entrance exam and learns it's going to be held next week. They were going to be waiting until the exam starts, but overhearing their conversation, a blonde girl wonders if this party is really interested in entering Harness Academy, especially when they all look like inferior species. They arrive at the hotel rooms, where Hakama and Neo pounce onto the comfy beds. They can finally sleep in a proper place. With Jin's initial goal of reaching the capital fulfilled, he wonders what he should do next. Even though this is a new era, he still has to find a way to make money to survive. By the way, our boy got a lump sum of money for exterminating those bandits, but he knows it won't last forever, especially not with the 4 of them. Then there's the added issue of finding these kids jobs. An immediate solution to this would be a meeting with Argus. However, right now, they don't know anything about the guy's location or what connections could lead them to him. Jin speculates on several options, prioritizing the investigation of corruptors first. He knows there are people in this era trying to exploit such monsters for their own goals. Corruptors are naturally very dangerous beings, so they can be left unattended. This time, he refuses to let the living face total annihilation again. Anyway, he casually asks Hakama what people in this country do when they need to research something. Apparently, they read books on the subject or consult someone knowledgeable. Books themselves are pretty expensive even back in the village. They had to read them together just to afford them. At the same time, the royal capital boasts a spectacular library, making research much easier. Jin likes that idea because now he can use that library to his advantage and find clues about the laboratory that Kagura left behind. In the next scene, our bro is at the receptionist's desk, but the girl openly rejects his request to use the facility. Since books are considered sacred national property, they don't allow just anyone free entry. Only students of a recognized academy or nobles are allowed to use such a place, once more complicating the situation for our boy. Hakama hilariously reminds Jin that he can even read in his current state. Though he's trying his best to learn his letters, it'll take him a while to get a full grasp of the language. Bro is scratching his head like he's got an exam to prepare for, while 2 dudes in cloaks are secretly spying on them. As part of their mission, they come up to confront Jin for a simple chat, but it actually starts with a violent punch. Our boy reflexively grabs the guy's fist right away before taunting him for having such amazing manners in his introduction. So much for the city's safety when people are attacking like this. But the guy remains arrogant, and Jin wards off his fist, diverting a powerful magic blast into the air. The fighter praises him for having sharp instincts, while Poor can't fathom how these guys are openly using divine power in the middle of a civilian zone. Our boy wants to know what's the deal with these losers and quickly realizes someone put a hit on his head. That only works out in his favor, though. Even though these bullies threaten Jin's group to get out of the capital unless they want to deal with danger, Jin doesn't budge. He invites the guy to try and attack him again, only to catch his fist and literally slam him into the hard ground. After delivering a reality check to one of them, he turns to the other, who is firing a magic blast right at him. Jin refuses to dodge and blocks the fiery attack head-on, making the guy think he dealt some serious damage. But out of the smoke emerges a hand. He quickly grabs the guy and lifts him up as if he weighs nothing. Adopting a serious tone, Jin mocks them for being pathetically weak while challenging them, that is, if they'd even have the will to try. Bro really is the Gojo Satoru of the story. Meanwhile, his victim is questioning how on earth a low-level species is capable of so much strength. Suddenly, a knight's order stops the fight. It's Karina, who is annoyed that she has to interrupt her day off for this trouble. The girl doesn't even care about the assailants who attack Jin. She just wants to throw both Hakama and our boy in jail for causing a scene which, much to Jin's favor, attracted the attention of someone connected to Argus, even if she's currently screaming in his face. After busting the street fight, Karina spots Jin, and immediately gets excited because she believes she has finally caught the inferior species Jin causing trouble in the sea again. She is just about to start lecturing him, but a dead human spectator standing nearby approaches her, and admits that she saw everything. The spectator explains that Jin was actually the one who got attacked first and was only defending himself. When Karina checks the faces of the attackers, she quickly realizes they are her usual foolish troublemaker juniors from Harness Academy. She quietly hopes that the Holy Captain's younger sister isn't involved in this mess again. Jin asks Karina if she's currently on patrol, pointing out that he thought guild members usually handled duties like this around the sea. Karina replies that she was simply taking care of her nightly responsibility of maintaining order while she was on her way to a nearby cave. Now that she has personally seen Jin defeat several strong students from the academy, things are starting to get interesting. Now that she's personally witnessed Jin effortlessly crush several elite students from the academy, Karina is starting to realize her captain's earlier suspicions about this so-called inferior human might actually be spot on. She tries to excuse herself, warning Jin to stay out of trouble, but Jin isn't about to let her off that easy. Instead, he seizes the chance to ask for an escort so he can finally meet her superior, Captain Argus. Once the ancient human finally secures an audience with Captain Argus of the 7th Division, he cuts straight to the chase and asks to be hired, reminding Argus that it was the captain himself who had previously offered a helping hand. When Argus questions him about the kids and Tao, Jin explains that he ran into the very bandits Argus had been hunting, captured them, and turned them over to the guild. Argus gets a bit restless. He finds it hard to believe someone from a supposedly inferior species could pull all that off so fast. Jin goes on to explain that he brought Nino, and his older sister, Hor, along because they have no one else to turn to, and society treats them like trash just for being labeled as inferior. Because of their situation, Jin asks the captain if he can hook them up with some kind of work. Captain Argus reminds the ancient human that he's under no obligation to help, but Jin argues that since he's the one who saved them, he's ready to take full responsibility for their well-being. Argus finds this logic intriguing, while the kids look up at their savior with pure hope in their eyes. The captain quickly hatches a plan, deciding to use the kids as a bargaining chip. He calmly tells Jin that he'll let the kids stay and work at his estate, but only if Jin agrees to take a job as an instructor at the academy. Jin accepts the deal without a second thought, and before long, the kids are decked out in maid uniforms. Or gives the captain her sincere thanks, while Argus instructs his other servants to train them well, and ensure there's absolutely no discrimination. As Jin walks off with Argus, he asks the captain what the real catch is behind this instructor jig. Argus explains that while he has no clue where Jin actually came from, his gut tells him that Jin is someone he can trust. The captain then gets straight to the point. He wants Jin to infiltrate Harness Academy. Jin turns serious and demands a real explanation, so Argus begins breaking down the current power struggle within the capital. According to him, several factions are locked in a silent cold war for the throne, especially since the king is critically ill and could kick the bucket at any moment. He further explains that besides the usual succession drama, there are individuals with zero legitimate claim to the throne who are still hungry for power. Apparently, these people are dangerous enough to use the corruptors known in this era as invaders, as weapons to push their agenda. Jin recalls Lord Shapian and starts to realize there might be even more troublesome players on the board than him. The captain says he wants to expose these people and find their hidden base, and his top suspect right now is Harness Academy. Argus then knocks on a door, and introduces Jin to his younger sister, Miria Ulton. He explains that she's a student at the academy, and will be his guide. Miria immediately shows off her sharp tongue, calling Jin a lowly inferior species, just like Karina did earlier. The captain quickly tries to shut her down, reminding her that she's being rude, but she keeps insisting that she doesn't approve of giving such a vital task to someone she considers inferior. Jin calls out her trashy attitude, which leaves the captain embarrassed and apologizing for her behavior. Karina leans in and whispers to Jin that while Miria is actually very talented, she has a massive chip on her shoulder regarding inferior species. Miria keeps hurling insults at Jin, claiming she doesn't see him as remotely qualified to be an instructor. Hakama then makes things even worse by casually mentioning that her guardian can't even read. However, Hakama quickly pivots, praising just how strong and capable Jin actually is. Her words suddenly make Karina realize that Miria was actually the one who had earlier egged on the academy students to attack Argus. The captain apologizes yet again, promising he'll properly discipline his sister. Jin changes the subject, asking Argus exactly what he's supposed to be teaching at the academy. Argus replies that, based on what he's seen, Jin seems incredibly skilled with spirit arts, making him the perfect candidate to teach the fundamentals. He lists the 4 basic spirit arts as ignition, discharge, freezing, and healing, explaining that mastering even 2 of them is usually considered more than enough. Hearing that the basics here only consist of 4 spirit arts, Jin realizes that the bandit leader from earlier was actually pretty damn skilled. The ability that guy used would definitely count as a high-level special spirit art in this era. Jin cracks a quiet smile, deciding then and there that he might just revolutionize how people in this era understand these special powers. The story then jumps forward a week, and it's finally time for Haikama to take her entrance exam at the academy. Argus arrives with Jin, wanting him to officially take over the instructor duties for the year. Apparently, every year, a division from the Night Order has to fill this role, and this time, it's the 7th Division's turn. As Jin quietly follows behind, a fat man named Rubman can stop staring at him the entire time. They eventually reach the headmaster's office, and Argus greets her with total respect. The headmaster smiles, clearly proud to see her former pupil doing so well in the Night Order. She then brings up the ongoing faction wars within the country, and suddenly shifts her fire to Jin, arguing to the captain that he shouldn't treat the academy so lightly by sending an inferior species to handle such a vital role. The captain firmly stands his ground, insisting that Jin is more capable than anyone else in his entire division. When that skinny rat, Lord Gita, notices the headmaster seems ready to accept Jin as their instructor, he quickly speaks up. When the skinny rat, Lord Kaeta, notices that the headmaster seems ready to accept Jin as their instructor, he quickly objects to the idea. He immediately takes over the role of insulting the poor, ancient human, strongly arguing that they cannot allow an inferior human to hold such a position. The headmaster then turns toward Lord Rubman and asks for his opinion regarding the protest. The fat man casually agrees with the concern but presents a practical argument about the backlash they might face from both the students and the other instructors. The headmaster then joins the protest as well, admitting that she shares the same concern. Jin realizes he's being talked about without being included, so he steps forward to stand up for himself, offering a respectful greeting. He calmly introduces himself with proper manners, showing he can remain composed even while being openly mocked. He then asks the lords a direct question, wondering whether they are judging him because he looks like an inferior species or because they believe he lacks the power needed for the role. The principal smiles and replies that their only concern is whether he truly has the required ability, asking if he can prove it to them. When Argus suggests the headmaster test him herself, she agrees, and a quick mock battle is arranged at the Harness Academy Spirit Arts training ground. The sly, skinny rat is the one who steps forward to face Jin, laughing as he says that at least Jin won't embarrass himself too badly since there are only a few students around today. The headmaster then explains the rules, making it clear that they can only fight using spirit arts, as that is exactly what she expects their new tutor to teach at the academy. Some of the students gather to watch the match, including Miria, who stands among the spectators. She's excited, because this is the first time she will see the skinny rat personally engage in battle. Jin already knows how this will end, yet he lets out a quiet sigh, and decides to let the institute witness his power for themselves. Argus, however, begins to feel uncertain. This is the first time he will actually see the person he recommended fighting in front of others, and he worries that Jin might end up embarrassing him. Lord Geta, on the other hand, looks extremely excited and seems eager to end the match quickly while putting Jin in his place. He quickly declares that he'll take the opening move and immediately launches a massive fireball that he believes will be enough to defeat Jin in a single strike. Jin calmly dodges the attack with ease, while the skinny rat remains confident that he'll win the contest and prove the captain's judgment wrong. He then follows up with his ace attack, lightning spears, while Jin continues dodging every strike, slowly getting on his nerves. While the skinny rat believes that all Jin can do is run away, Jin himself quietly sighs, thinking that this kind of power was never meant to be used against people. However, since there is no other choice left, Jin finally decides to demonstrate his ability, and intentionally reveals a unique spirit art. He uses a gravity manipulation attack and forces the skinny rat, Lord Geta, down onto the ground, pinning him there, and making it clear that he never stood a chance and that his arrogance meant nothing. In the end, the headmaster and Lord Rubman, the fat man, are both left shocked by what they witnessed. Even Argus and his sister, Miria, stand there with their mouths open after seeing such a clean display of power one they've never witnessed before. When they ask what exactly just happened, Jin calmly explains that he simply manipulated the gravity surrounding Lord Geta. Hearing people say they've never seen anything like this before, Jin smiles quietly, realizing just how much the students and instructors of the academy have to learn. Lord Geta grinds his teeth in frustration as he lies flat on the ground, looking absolutely miserable. Out of sheer pity for the wrinkly old man, our hero finally releases the gravity pressure pinning him down. Geta has a total meltdown, shouting that a spirit art like that shouldn't even exist. He insists the inferior must be using some kind of illegal trick. Our boy quietly stands there and takes the verbal abuse like a champ, while the geezer screeches in his face like a total Karen. Watching the exchange, the headmaster calmly makes her decision. The surrounding students are impressed as well. Miria, in particular, cannot understand how he controls that much divine power, especially since inferiors normally possess barely any at all. Her curiosity spikes, and she is determined to uncover who Jin really is. The scene shifts to the welcome ceremony 1 week later. There, the headmaster announces that Harness Academy was founded to train warriors capable of eliminating invading threats. Anyone too weak to keep up has no place within its walls. However, those who succeed are practically guaranteed a future filled with status and influence. Observing from above, a few demi-humans standing near Miria are surprised by how many newcomers have gathered. Quite a few of them don't even come from noble families. A lion demi-human named Ryaz greets Miria casually. He mentions that it's unexpected to see her attending the welcome ceremony in person. While chatting, he suddenly notices an inferior sitting beside the faculty and nearly chokes. He completely loses his composure when Miria reveals that the inferior is actually their new teacher. She asks Ryaz for his honest first impression based purely on appearance. When he bluntly describes the guy as an average nobody with no wife and no lie, she admits that was her initial judgment too. Feeling multiple stares drilling into him, Jin quickly realizes he can't start investigating the academy too openly from day one. Before anything else, he needs to rebrand his image from a worthless inferior into something more neutral and unthreatening. Right now, it feels like he has a giant target painted on his back. After the ceremony concludes, it's finally time for his first class. Meanwhile, Lord Gaeta gathers the senior students and announces that regular classes are officially back in session. He bluntly warns them not to fall behind the promising new talents who joined this year. That said, he angrily demands to know why most of the class is absent. The old man smiles inwardly, fully aware that many of them would rather die than sit through a lesson taught by an inferior. That crazy rat even went out of his way to spread the word that today's lecture would be handled by Jin. Surprisingly, our professor doesn't seem bothered in the slightest. He confidently stands at the podium and introduces himself as the new spirit techniques instructor. Without missing a beat, Reyes shamelessly asks whether he truly has what it takes to teach the most elite class in the academy. Our boy responds with a calm smile, saying they will find out soon enough. He even tells the lion demi-human that he is free to leave if the class proves to be beneath him. With that established, he lays down one rule immediately: they must never use divine power against humans under any circumstance. Clarifying his reasoning, he explains that divine power was designed to suppress the regeneration abilities of inhibitors. However, humans recover normally after being hurt, revealing that its true purpose was always to eliminate invaders. Hearing that, some loudmouth at the back starts trash talking, calling him Saw because he supposedly lacks divine power. The brat insists he has every right to use his strength however the hell he pleases. Slightly annoyed, Professor Jin invites him to test whether he's truly as weak as claimed, right there in the middle of class. He tells the student to hit him with his strongest move. The kid grins arrogantly, declaring he will never attend class again if the professor so much as scratches him. Seizing the opportunity, he conjures a lightning spear crackling with energy. Even Lord Gaeta tenses up, worried the classroom might not survive such a reckless attack. Without hesitation, the student launches the spear straight at Jin, kicking up a massive cloud of dust across the room. Everyone assumes the inferior got destroyed, but then a blade shoots out from the haze and jams into the wall behind the kid, barely missing his ugly mug. Jin calmly states that the sword could have pierced him completely if he truly intended to end him. With that, he delivers his first lesson of the semester: never judge someone purely by appearance. Riaz watches in silence, wondering if that technique even qualified as a spirit art. Professor Jin continues smoothly, explaining that inferiors are labeled that way because they are considered weak. Then, as someone clearly leagues above them, he asks what that would make him. His aura surges to its peak as he answers his own question that, he declares, is what you call a teacher. Next, he delivers a second lesson. He asks the same kid if he knows the criteria required to activate spirit arts. Acting like it is common knowledge, the student answers that it all comes down to vivid imagination. If you picture something clearly enough, the spirits will carry it out. Professor Chin agrees that imagination matters but adds that there is one critical element they are all missing. He explains that spirits respond to different wavelengths, and those are what really trigger their actions. There are 8 primary wavelengths in total. Among them, ignition, discharge, healing, and freezing are the 4 most people know. However, gravity control, light control, atmospheric control, and spatial manipulation also exist. Lord Gaeta nearly choked seeing him use all 8 of them so casually. With that revelation, our boy formally begins his first real lecture. Later that evening, he contemplates where to start his investigation into the academy's secrets. The campus is crowded with students at every corner. After the display in class, he is the main topic of discussion. If he wants answers, he needs access to somewhere students are not allowed to enter. On his way, he crosses paths with Miria. Without hesitation, she bluntly asks him to admit who he truly is. He responds by asking how he could be anything other than the so-called inferior everyone labels him as. She concedes that would make sense, if not for his ability to command all 8 spirit arts effortlessly. Not even most demi-humans are capable of that. Our boy shrugs and tells her it is not that complicated, comparing it to switching tabs between different wavelengths. Of course, he knows it's more complex in practice than it sounds. She requests they continue this conversation somewhere private. Once alone, she repeats her question about who he is. This time, he claims he is simply a human who was placed in cold sleep beneath Kadama village for a few million years. To humor him, she asks what he supposedly did before hibernation. Jin answers honestly he served as a special forces agent for his country. Even though millennia have passed, he remembers those days vividly, as if they happened only a few years ago. Curious, she presses further, asking why someone who fought for his nation would be sealed away in cold sleep. He feels a pang of sadness admitting he failed his mission. He truly believed that if he pushed himself far enough, he could save everyone, but he failed in the end and lost everything. He also confesses that becoming a professor was not random. He needs the influence of the Alton family. Moving on, he asks her where they are headed. She soon leads him to a dusty, run-down room, explaining it used to be a storage space where instructors kept their teaching supplies. On one of the shelves, an owl statue immediately catches his attention. He asks what her real reason was for bringing him here. Myriad admits she has been investigating the strange empty space located right next to this storage room. It is far too large to simply be unused, which makes her certain it is hiding something important. Without wasting a second, Professor Jin casually reaches out and grabs the owl statue. She side-eyes him in confusion, wondering why he is petting a dusty old decoration. The moment he twists it slightly, the bookshelves slide apart, revealing a hidden passage leading deeper inside. He calmly congratulates her on being correct about the existence of a secret room. Miria is left speechless, unable to understand how he solved the mechanism so quickly. Our professor coolly explains that he noticed the owl was the only clean object in a room buried under thick layers of dust. After that, he tells Miria to remain behind while he goes in to investigate the suspicious chamber alone. Surprised, Miria firmly states that she will be accompanying him. He reminds her that there could be a dangerous invader inside, and he might not be able to protect her, but the blonde makes it clear that her skills are not to be underestimated. She confidently claims she stands leagues above everyone else in her class, with only her brother possibly surpassing her in skill. Hearing that, he decides to take her at her word. The two of them carefully descend the decrepit staircase, which stretches far deeper than either of them expected. Miria quietly appreciates how convenient it is to command light so effortlessly in total darkness. Jin casually jokes out loud that the place feels like the perfect dungeon for monsters to spawn in a fantasy game, leaving the girl confused by his gamer reference. Curious again, she brings up his backstory once more. She asks if he already has a suspect in mind, since hunting down threats was supposedly his specialty. He cannot help but feel amused at how quickly she accepted his unbelievable story. As a small reward for her trust, he reveals that he has a strong suspicion Lord Redman might be involved somehow. She immediately asks why he is so certain. Professor Jin explains that while the man appears charismatic during lectures, there is something deeply unsettling about him when he is alone in those quiet moments. The crazy bastard gives off the vibe of someone definitely plotting something shady. Jin explains that this kind of behavior is common among people who are completely different from the persona they present to the world. On top of that, he found it pretty obvious that the man is far too observant for a mere teacher. Miria admits she originally suspected Lord Gita instead, but Jin dismisses her theory, pointing out that someone with zero control over his emotions could never orchestrate anything truly sinister. To her surprise, he even goes as far as to say that the wrinkly old nutcase is probably decent at heart. At last, the two reach the bottom of the staircase, which opens into a massive, dust-filled hall. Miria's eyes widen in shock at the enormous labyrinth hidden directly beneath the academy grounds. Suddenly, Jin stops walking, because he is just as stunned. Not even in his wildest imagination did he expect to find Kagura's laboratory hidden in a place like this. When Jin looks at the doors protected by nanomachines which people of this era would simply call spirits, he becomes certain that this must truly be Kagura's laboratory. Miria grows nervous because, even though she had been searching for a long time, she never managed to discover this massive door that had been hidden beneath the academy the entire time. Jin explains to her that ordinary people would need a special access key to open such a door. He remembers how Haikama inherited the key back in Kudama village, and he believes that someone in this place must have inherited a similar key in the same way. However, Jin already knows that he himself automatically holds full access, so he calmly raises his hand. The lock system immediately recognizes him as the individual with the highest level of authority and quickly unlocks the door for him. As the large gates slowly open, Jin wonders if the one trying to overthrow the rulers of this country might also be someone who had access to this place. Meanwhile, Miria still stands there stunned, unable to process that something like this existed right beneath their academy all along. She then asks Jin if he truly did not need a key, and Jin casually remarks that ancient humans are special in that regard. Miria finally begins to believe that Jin's words might be true and quietly follows him deeper underground into the hidden lab. Inside, they discover several corruptors locked inside large metal cages, and strangely, all of them remain completely calm without showing any sign of going wild. Jin remembers the corruptors that the bandits had locked up earlier, and recalls how they also stayed unusually quiet until the moment they were finally released. However, the thing that troubles him the most is the question of how anyone could transport such massive corruptors all the way into a place like this without being noticed. Miria admits that her brother's suspicion about this academy might have been correct after all. She suggests that they quietly stay hidden there and wait so they can ambush whoever is responsible for this, since the culprits will surely return to this place sooner or later. Jin, however, tells her that instead of standing around and waiting, they should quickly seal the academy and deal with these corruptors first. Miria argues that they cannot allow the mastermind behind this plan to escape, but Jin explains that protecting the students must come first. If these corruptors start rampaging, it will put every life in the academy at risk. When he mentions that her brother would probably make the same decision, the girl finally agrees with his approach. Jian then adds that he has a bad feeling about all of this, and whenever he gets that feeling, his instincts usually turn out to be correct. He says that he will investigate the laboratory a little further himself and asks her to go back up and bring her brother so the academy can be placed under curfew and the students can be protected. After sending her back to the surface, Jian moves deeper into the underground facility, hoping to discover some useful clues. Meanwhile, on the surface, the skinny rat is being mocked for losing to the new tutor. Even so, he still calls Jin an inferior species and blames him for ruining his reputation. The headmaster then walks over to Lord Gita and tells the skinny rat to stop making strange movements because the students are starting to feel uncomfortable. He gets publicly humiliated by the headmaster before being asked about Lord Redmond, who has been missing since that morning. The headmaster feels overwhelmed. The fat man's absence only makes her more worried. Just then, she notices a dark cloud forming above the academy, and wonders what has just happened. Meanwhile, Miria rushes toward the surface, but as she exits the door, she comes face to face with Lord Rudman, the fat man who had been missing since the morning. He's now wearing a purely evil expression that clearly shows he is up to no good. Back in the lab, Jin examines some strange, reddish portals that appear to pulse, as if they are alive. He wonders whether this thing is actually a living organism, and if Kagura was the one who created it. Jin then finds the message cube Kagura left behind, along with an nanomachine injector. The ancient human hopes the cube will contain clues to help him understand and resolve the current situation. He quickly activates the cube, and a hologram of Kagura appears, casually holding a coffee. Kagura had already expected Jin to reach this facility before anyone else, since this lab is the closest to where he would awaken. The doc explains that in this lab, he was developing a device that humans had never accomplished even hundreds of millions of years ago, and that a small portion of the device's power has been sealed within the injector for Jin to use. He praises himself for this achievement before finally revealing that the mind-blowing device he is referring to is actually a teleportation device. Never in his wildest imagination did he think Kagura was capable of building something on this scale, but now everything starts clicking into place. Art has mentioned that invaders appeared across the city out of nowhere. Alarm bells start ringing in Jin's head, because whoever owns this device is likely behind everything, especially with an entire zoo's worth of monsters locked up down here. Then, he notices something off about the mad scientist's recorded message. The original teleportation device was a pure blue color. If that is true, then what the hell is this red device standing in front of him now? Just as the nearby clock strikes 12, the device activates with a violent hum. Jin steadies himself, bracing for whatever nightmare is about to crawl out of it. Instead, every invader inside the cages instantly vanishes into thin air. Up on the surface, Argus and the Holy Knights witness their worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Hundreds of invaders rain down from the sky onto the royal capital, looking like they just dropped into a high-stakes battle royale match. Back underground, the crazy fat man turns toward Miria with the creepiest smile imaginable. He mockingly asks why she seems so tense and impatient. Miria coldly tells the pig responsible for all this to step aside, unless he is asking for a fight. Genuinely surprised, Lord Rubman admits he suspected she had been investigating him for quite some time. Unfortunately for her, she simply figured it out too late. When Miria demands to know what that means, he calmly declares that the day of judgment has arrived. The balding potato sighs, revealing he originally planned to delay this event, but the two rats snooping around his laboratory forced his hand. More specifically, he realized that the real threat to his grand plan is Jin. Every instinct in his gut warned him that the new instructor would become the biggest headache imaginable, just like Miria's brother. Without needing confirmation, he already knows Jin was the one who uncovered the hidden passage. Deciding he has wasted enough time talking, he concludes it is best to eliminate all witnesses right here. Miria almost laughs at the idea that he believes he can defeat her. A disturbingly demonic grin spreads across Rudman's face as he boasts about the unimaginable power he has gathered. What he does not realize is that a girl is quietly creeping up behind him with a pot larger than his own head. Miria breaks into a nervous sweat, torn between fear for the girl and doubt over whether this ridiculous plan will actually succeed. Without hesitation, Aikama swings with everything her tiny arms can muster and smashes the fat bastard's large, lard-filled head. Miria stares at her in shock and wants to know how she even found this place. Aikama hurriedly explains that she came looking for Jin. There is absolute chaos outside, and it will be impossible to save everyone without their guardian. On the way, she ran into another new student, Hudo. The girl mentioned that their professor entered the storage room not long ago. The new girl feels slightly guilty about knocking out a teacher, but Hakama insists the creep deserved every bit of it. Besides, since he never saw their faces from behind, they could easily pin the blame on the blonde princess if things go south. At that moment, Jin finally reaches the top of the stairs. Concerned, he asks what happened, only to spot a floppy pig on the floor like a fallen bowling pin. Hakama quickly snaps him out of it, and informs him that the city outside has descended into complete chaos. He is not surprised at all, because he already knows there is only one destination the lab's invaders could have been sent to. Miria turns pale as the realization hits her, and the three of them rush outside without wasting another second. Fires rage across the city, and nearly half of it lies in ruins. Terrified citizens scatter in every direction as hell breaks loose. Among all the invading creatures, one monster that looks like a hulking Vilgax stands out as the strongest by far. Seeing her beloved home reduced to this state leaves Miria completely speechless. Meanwhile, Jin feels the weight of failure crush his chest again, thinking he should have destroyed the device when he had the chance. Ibana snaps him back to reality again. She points at the massive tentacle monster, which is charging up a devastating attack aimed straight at the royal palace. Determined to atone for his mistake, Jin uses the injection Kagura left behind for him. After using it, he gains a toned-down version of teleportation. The mad scientist had explained that the nanomachines only store enough energy to activate it once every 24 hours. On top of that, its range is supposedly limited to a short distance within the user's line of sight. However, those restrictions apply to ordinary users, and Jin is anything but ordinary. Someone of his caliber can practically teleport as far as his eyes are capable of seeing. Without hesitating even a second, he vanishes and reappears directly in the path of the massive laser beam, just before it can strike the royal palace.